Ladies and gentlemen, councillors.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Okay,
Good afternoon, Mr. Leader.
Welcome to this meeting of the
Good afternoon.
Executive Cabinet. Delayed response there. Just to remind you, obviously this meeting is a hybrid meeting and I presume it's being streamed, is it? So members will be aware that we are streaming this meeting, so please bear that in mind. There are some members present in the Cabinet members are present in the Council chamber, which is very nice to see, and it's a sign that we are moving on from COVID, hopefully despite the recent spike, and obviously other people are dialing in from home or wherever. The first item is any apologies for absence. Nina?
We've not received any, Chair.
Thank you. Item 1 is the minutes of the previous meeting, which is the 25th of March 2021. Somebody move those minutes, please. Moved by Councillor Morwood. Seconded by Councillor Wilson. Thank you. All those in favour of accepting those minutes? Great stuff. Okay. Item 2 is any declarations of interest in any of the items on the agenda from any Cabinet members present? No. Any public questions? Item 3?
None received, Chair.
Thank you, Nina. And we move, therefore. I've had a request to move Councillor Murray's items up the agenda, so we're going to start, if that's okay, with Councillor Murray's first item. Just through to find it, which is item 9. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bev Murray, MBE. Congratulations, your worshipfulness for services to delivery in South East Chorley. Is that right, Bev? Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that, councillors, and congratulations to Bev. It is an honour not just for her but for Chorley, and that is very much recognised. So, your worshipfulness, neighbourhood working. Item 9. Back to business.
Thank you, Chair. Neighbourhood working. So this report outlines the changes to neighbourhood working. As members will know, neighbourhood working is a mechanism for backbench councillors to have input or lead on a project in their ward. Before the last election, neighbourhood areas were easily defined due to the footprint of each of the old wards. Obviously, this has changed with the boundaries changing, and the new neighbourhood areas are outlined in the report on page 155. Also, there's been a slight change because previously there were 3 projects per neighbourhood area. Now members can choose 1 large project or small ones up to a maximum of 4, and the budget for each area is now £8,000. This year there's obviously a shorter running time for projects, so members will get a list of examples and projects which can be delivered in the shorter time scale. Moving forward, obviously there will be greater flexibility. And finally, I'd just like to draw your attention to the end of the report, which includes information on member grants and also environmental projects, which previously came from the Neighbourhood Working Fund, but now there's a separate monies to be applied for. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Any questions on that report? I'm looking to look on screen and in the room. I don't see any hands up. Oh, Councillor Walker, sorry. Go on.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, delighted neighbourhood is back in operation. It is part of the councillor's year of work, and I'm delighted it is back. Just one comment to make is that we were calling Exton, Buckshaw and Whittle, Chorley North and Astley, Chorley Town North. I don't see where the town comes into those 4 or 5 areas. I'd like it to be called Chorley North and take the town out of it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you very much.
Quit while you're ahead, Councillor Walker.
Yes, thank you very much.
That was easy. Any other questions? Councillor Holgate.
Yeah, just to congratulate Bev. She's obviously outstanding in her field, and well done.
Thank you, Stephen.
That's the other question. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Walker, still got your hand up. You took it down. Thank you, John. Okay. Any other questions or comments? In that case, we are asked to, proposal is to accept the recommendations in paragraphs 3 to 5. Is anybody seconding those, please?
Seconded.
Seconding to that change. Yes, sorry, to the change on the name. Yeah. All those in favour, please show. That's approved. Thank you. I've also been given advice that the item that was detailed in part 2 papers, which is also Councillor Murray's item, actually can be considered now, which is the LCC holiday activity and food programme. There is no requirement for this report to be taken under part 2, so you can carry on, Councillor Murray, with that item number 10 on your agendas.
Thank you, Chair. This report is to inform members on the holiday activity and food programme. Lancashire County Council have received funding from government to deliver a range of school activities for children between 4 and 16 who are eligible for free school meals. The county have developed a desired model of delivery for the national programme, with the expectation that local districts will play a key role to deliver locally and help achieve best outcomes. It's proposed that the council work with Inspire and Chorley Sports Partnership to deliver this, with a member of the communities team overseeing the district coordinator's role to ensure standards are met and identify any emerging needs. Straightforward report, really.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Any questions on that report or comments? Councillor with a hand up, I can't see who it is. Sorry, Christine. Councillor Christine Turner, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Please, will the executive member explain how she's going to ensure that all the children who receive free school meals in Chorley can access the support? As in the report, the reach is calculated at 30% and 777 children and 35% and 907 children. I just wonder, what about the other 1,684 children?
I have got some information on that. I'll just try and access it for you, because that's the point that I did raise.
Got the information. Just got a couple of an IT issue. Councillor was just trying to source the information. Right.
Okay, no problem.
The lights of digital meetings.
Sorry, yeah. The 30% reference is the amount of places a programme needs to make available per day that the county have informed us. This is a national delivery format from the Department of Education, and funding has been allocated based on this provision. We have 2,591 free school meals children. Therefore, we need to make approximately 777 places per day available, which allows for 30% of our free school meal children at any one time. The county funding budget covers the delivery of this. However, there will be a shortfall, but we do work anyway with partners. Without this funding previously, we have done to ensure that we try and reach those that are sort of identified, but sometimes hard to reach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So what I'm assuming from that, Councillor Murray, sorry, Councillor Turner, is that we'll hit different children on different dates, so the aggregate number will be far higher than that number.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Also, someone raised the concern that obviously the youth zone is in the centre of town, and you know there may be some issues around those in outlying districts, but we do have a rural premium. And from speaking with officers and the youth zone, it may be that where there are children on free school meals in sort of the outlying areas, that there is some local provision that we can buy into. So if it's like a local holiday club or something like that, funding can be used for that as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. As it's such an important subject, would it be possible to bring some sort of a report to council when it's finished, so we can just see how it went? Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. We can do one locally. I assume the county council will be doing it anyway, because it's sort of the funding that we're having to deliver. So I'd expect a full report from the county council as well.
We'll be collecting data to feed back to them, but I'm sure we can share that data with members, because I think we'll all be interested as to the take up and the delivery in each of our own areas.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think it's important that we oversee the role of the district coordinator. It's not just about what's happening now, it's about sort of emerging needs as well, to make sure that we look to catch everything in the future and map everything properly.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on that report?
Yes, Chair.
Sorry, Councillor Molyneux.
It's quite all right. I'll let you off this once. Can I ask Councillor Murray, I know you said about the outlying areas, you said rural areas. Hopefully that would include Adlington, which isn't classed as a rural area. But as you know, they do have issues with transport links, etc. at the lower end of the village, which is where I would think the majority of preschool meals children would be from.
Nobody ever forgets about Adlington, June, when you're...
Well, we don't let you.
I'm sure that will be reflected in the delivery.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? As I said, we are asked, bear with me a second, to approve the recommendations in paragraphs 2 and 3, which Councillor Murray has proposed. Somebody second that, please. Councillor Wilson, on behalf of Adlington, if not everywhere else. All those members in favour, please show. So everybody, thank you. That's great. Thank you, Councillor Murray, for that. That's all your items, isn't it? You're not doing any freestyle ones additionally tonight, no? Okay, so the next item then is back to the agenda, is item 4, which is is one of my items, which is the Registered Provider Partnership Framework, the final version for implementation, which is on pages 9 to 24. Members will be aware we have previously been to various meetings to look to set up a Registered Provider Partnership Framework in Chorley, because as we see greater change in the planning process, we see more housing providers, social housing providers come to Chorley to look to deliver their promises within our area. Traditionally, we've only had a limited number of registered providers. We've worked very closely with some very large, if you like, large percentage-wise of our overall delivery of social housing to deliver those properties, and we have a quite high expectation of them, which we've done jointly with them. So, for example, there was a Scrutiny report done on performance of social housing providers, which almost benchmarked this kind of delivery we would like to see, and we would like to implement that wider. We therefore are doing this through the partnership framework. We have sent out the previous requirements to partners and others as part of a consultation. It details when that consultation was done. It details some of the responses in the report that came back. We've obviously tweaked our proposals on the basis of that. We've considered the consultation responses, particularly where providers perhaps felt that they were being prejudiced by some of the requirements of our framework. And so we've taken a pragmatic view on that. But I think what we've got to do is keep our eye on why we are looking to do this, which is to set certain standards, set certain expectations around providers operating in the Chorley Borough, and therefore the amended framework is detailed for members, and we now want to implement it and get it out there and get using it. So, like I said, it's been quite a long gestation period. We've consulted widely, and now we need to get it in place. The recommendation is quite simple, is to approve the amended version of the framework and to implement it. I suspect once it is implemented, it will be reviewed, amended and tweaked as we use it and experience it, and therefore this will change in due course, but we need to actually implement what we've come forward with at this point in time. Happy to take questions, comments, etc. If anybody's got any on that proposal. Councillor Holgate.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just briefly, is there any implications within the report towards the aspirations of the council to be a housing provider, or is that something quite separate?
Right, so we've got a dispute here already. It is, but it isn't. It is, yeah, it isn't, because this is a framework for all providers. And if we were to be a provider of any note and size, and as we currently are and are becoming because of some of the projects we are doing, we will have to adhere to our own framework, technically, because we cannot be doing less than what we're asking others to do. And therefore, I would hope that we exceed any framework minimum requirements and we operate as a good exemplar in that process. That's certainly what our intention is in administration, so I don't see it being a diminution of that.
That was a friendly question. Thank you, Chair.
Always a friendly question for you, Councillor Holgate. Here's another one, Councillor Boardman.
It's a friendly question, Alistair, so don't panic. I was going to say, Alistair, I think it's a good piece of work, and we're generally in favour of rationalising down the RPs that we've got, and I think 5's a good number. But I just brought it up with the directors yesterday, and it's more in relation to when a provider doesn't provide, which we've seen some of them doing over the past few years, being on our register and then actually not accepting some of the homes that are being built. So it's more in terms of how often this gets reviewed in order to basically keep our churn going. And if one provider or two providers aren't providing, we can bring somebody else in that'll certainly do that job for us, because we do have a low uptake of, well, certainly a low build of affordable housing at the moment, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better over the next few years when we see the papers later on. So it's just on that, Alistair, really.
Okay, and the comment on that is, I don't think we are trying to reduce the numbers. What we're trying to do is make sure that those operating, there can be as many as we can possibly accommodate, who, as long as they're performing to certain standards. I think also, yes, we are experiencing issues sometimes with people taking on properties, sometimes for reasons that don't relate to Chorley, i.e. more about their overall group risk strategy, their overall positions and position financially. So I think, yes, you're quite right on your point. I accept it fully, and that's part of implementing these standards, and these requirements will help us to do some of that work, in my view. Well, that's reassuring.
Yeah, thanks. That's great.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this report? Okay. On that basis, then, I've made the proposal that we approve the version of the framework for implementation. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Gabbert. All those in favour, please show. That's everybody. So that is excellent. Thank you. The next item is item 5, which is the response to the overview and scrutiny task group on sustainable public transport, which is on pages 25 to 58. Again, members will be aware from previous meetings that we got a recommendation on the report from the overview and scrutiny task group was received at the last council meeting or the previous council meeting, and has then been asked to us to look to comment on that and to take action on that. All the recommendations, I think, and actions are accepted, and we are going to try and deliver on all those actions that were requested by that scrutiny group. The tables that start on paragraph 14 from pages 27 through to page 30 document all the individual recommendations and the actions that come from that, and who will lead in terms of service leads on those different areas, because it does cover a number of different portfolios. It also requires us to act in different ways, somewhere we're more directly involved and somewhere we're indirectly involved. And as a whole, it should allow us to look at a more integrated approach to the sustainable public transport, which I think many will agree is an area of concern, an area that we need to improve on, but we can't do unilaterally. Some of this is going to come from central government, some of this is going to come from regional and county council, and to a lesser extent ourselves. But what we should be doing is certainly advocating and demanding that for Chorley we get sustainable public transport, because, as we all know, the rise of particularly carbon-fueled cars will not help us achieve our climate ambitions, but also many other ambitions around health, around efficiencies, and around just better health and well-being generally. So the recommendations are to accept that, to move on. They're all detailed there, and we want to get on again and implement these. That's the proposal. happy to take questions, although some members of that scrutiny group probably know far more about these items than I do. Any questions on that report? Councillor Morwood.
Just a bit of clarification. So basically, we're saying although there's quite a few external groups involved in this, that all 22 might not, just to make it clear, all 22 recommendations might not all come together quite as written down, would you say?
I think we are going to do what it says in this plan. Where that then takes us post
Right,
that
yeah.
is a play a separate question.
Fair enough.
Alistair, we need to do the first step and then see where that takes us.
Right.
I think that makes sense. And some we can deliver wholly ourselves. Many others require the interface of others. But this gives us the ability to take this evidence base of this is what, you know, with the evidence that we've reviewed in that scrutiny. It's not just a request; it's an evidence-based demand. Councillor Molyneux.
Thanks, Chair. It's the table on page 14 of the report. A bit of background. Adlington, it says about hourly services being reinstated. Well, recently they've been reduced again. It's gone back to 2 hourly without any consultation whatsoever. So it actually strengthens the report comments that we do need to be consulted when these things happen. That's all. It's not a question. It's just a comment, Chair.
And noted and agreed, Councillor.
Thank you.
I've got Councillor Boardman. Martin.
Thanks, Alistair. It's just more of an observation. I think the report's well written. We had a chat last night in our group meeting. It's the title of the report is Sustainable Public Transport, but we've just got some difficulty understanding where items 19, 20 and 21 sit into the public transport, which is all cycling based. I think if we're introducing something like cycling, which is a personal vehicle, into the mix with something like this, we should either include other personal vehicles, which are unfortunately electric cars, which are not in the mix here, or we take them out completely and we have a look at a separate strategy for cycling and walking, because I know Councillor Holgate's quite passionate about this, and I wouldn't want that element, which potentially we are in more control of, to get lost in this documentation, and it's whether it gets extracted and extrapolates into another document, which is something we can focus a bit more on.
And for your benefit, I suspect that it's sustainable public transport, not purely. I think some of those items fall into the public arrangement rather than the sustainable, i.e., via a public. So, for example, the cycling routes.
Chair.
The cycling routes. No, 1 minute, June. What the cycling routes are on public.
Yeah,
land.
sorry.
The charging points will be on public land. So it's about that public interface with that sustainable transport. I appreciate what you're saying, Councillor Boardman, and June, you can come in at that point.
Well, I was just going to say, we mentioned cycling. It was brought up right at the end of the report, and actually it's to actually look at cycling as a separate issue. It's a suggestion for a further task group.
It was.
I think that's one of the recommendations.
It is.
Just to clear that up. Yeah.
But also it's the use of public infrastructure to get sustainable transport, which is the linkage there. So I don't think it's appropriate to remove them, but I think, particularly given that one is a request for a further scrutiny group, so I'd rather leave them in, if that's okay with members. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments or questions on that report? Okay, as my proposal is with paragraph 2 is the recommendation, that the recommendations are all accepted en bloc, seconded by Councillor Morwood. All those in favour, please show. Excellent. That's agreed. Moving on, item 5A is an extra item that's been added on a little late on, so you might have that in your later pages, which is the proposal for the Alker Lane scheme. Obviously, Alker Lane scheme can't carry on forever. Is that the development that we're doing down there, beyond the Strawberry Fields Digital Hub, is called the Strawberry Meadows Business Park. All very evocative and all the rest of it of summertime and wandering through the Strawberry Meadows. for what is effectively the commercial industrial estate, but I'm sure it'll look really pleasant when it's finished. But that's the proposal. I don't think there's any more to say, really. It links to the digital hub. We could call it something else, but it's been through enough hands already, I would suspect, and therefore, unless anybody's got any other bright ideas, in which case, why didn't they say it earlier? We will. That's the proposal in paragraph 2. The stunned silence. Yes, we could have called it a Bev Murray Memorial Way, but enough.
I'm not dead yet, so.
Sorry, Your Ladyship. Okay, that's the proposal. So let's second that. All those in favour, please show. And let's just hope we spell the sign correctly. That's all I'll say. I'd hate it to be in the Lancashire Evening Post. Okay, item 6 is Councillor Wilson. You'll be delighted to know the Revenue and Capital Budget Monitoring Report.
Thank you. Sure, give a brief summary, Chair. We only asked to note a number of the elements of the report, but just to approve the capital expenditure. So it says there on the executive summary that this, as it stands, the year-end underspend is £57,000, and that can be, in terms of where that is, or how that is reached, as it were, that's on page 65 in Table 1. Gives you a detailed breakdown of our shortfalls and overspends. Obviously, most of those, as usual, come from savings in staffing. Moving on through the report, Chair, just to try and give it again a brief summary, we've got the main income streams for the council. So we've got Market Walk. Clearly, the actual revenue there, or the actual overall profit rather, is down given the whole COVID situation and the need to renegotiate rents, or the fact that people aren't able to pay. But still, that's performing strongly when you see that it's bringing in just almost £1 million. Leisure Centre, on the Leisure Centre contract, again, we're actually in a better position than we thought, because the money that we set aside has not been quite needed. So that's quite a significant change in the deficit in the projection to the actual. And as we start running the leisure centres, of course, we will carefully monitor that. But it may be interest to members that obviously, if we can run it more efficiently and it's not costing as much as perhaps we would have been paying out to another outside operator, and that's something to reflect on in the future as well, but time will tell. In terms of the money, again, in terms of the revenues coming into the council, we've obviously received a drop in income tax and business rates. Again, not entirely surprising given the period we've been through. And again, not to a degree, when you look at the figures, not to a degree that's causing major problems, but at the same time, it is still to be noted that is down. The report also then details the monies that have come in the support grants that the government have paid into the council, and obviously then we've paid out. And again, I know we've discussed and debated that in a number of meetings in the past. That still continues. The position on the general balances, as it says on page 74, is that we just have the £4 million, which we stick to. So we stick to those principles. And again, the capital programme is largely remains the same, Chair. So I'll pause there.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any questions or comments on that report? Who's got hand up? Sorry, Councillor Chapman. Sorry, you're just off my screen, Sam.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. Hopefully that's a bit better for you. Yeah, just one question. The provision for bad debts for Market Walk is in the report. It says 438,000, but it does say that the bad debt provision will be likely reduced significantly in 21-22, as a lot of that is repaid. In terms of how much is repaid, what would Councillor Wilson consider to be a bad result?
A bad result. Had a few bad results in your time, Peter?
A bad result. Well, thankfully, we don't have many bad results. But I suppose a bad result would be that if it was just as bad, Councillor Chapman. But no, look, you're right to raise the issue, because it's difficult when you're negotiating renewal of leases and you have to make the judgment calls on keeping the tenants that you want, but then obviously acknowledging that sometimes there's issues there in terms of what they can pay, and then you've got those people who haven't been paying. So you have to balance all that off. But my idea, Councillor Chapman, to be very, very simplistic, is that we make up as much as we can, we get as much as we can, and any result that brings more income in and doesn't see bad debt provision the same or anything like what it is currently is a good result.
And just to add to that, I mean, there are two ways of doing this at the moment. One is we can enforce on people who are in a tight financial situation and drive them out of business, as I think a number of private landlords are doing currently, and being very short-sighted, i.e. give us the money now, because which gets you nowhere, because you end up with nothing and an empty premises, or you take a more pragmatic view that people will pay back as and when they can, and they have the wherewithal. We've been through an unprecedented situation. Most of our traders want to remain in Chorley, they want to remain open, and they want to pay the money. They've had deferrals, not cancellations of the debt, and therefore I think 3 times now at least, if not 5 times, we've discussed about coming out of lockdown and recovering some of this money, and every time then we've gone back into another stage of lockdown. You could argue that's a government policy problem, and the fact that we're yo-yoing in and out of lockdown, particularly in Lancashire, has been problematic. But I think we have to be pragmatic about how we treat what to us are long-term partners, because the people who operate in our town centre premises are long-term partners. We don't make the most money out of them and for the short-term benefit. We make a reasonable amount of money over a longer period, and that way we're seen as a fair and reasonable landlord, and we will carry on acting in that way. But in terms of what a good position is, if you can tell me when COVID finishes, I'll tell you what a good position is, because we're in common here with every other landlord in the country that none of us know quite where we're at, particularly around town centre and hospitality rents. Is that okay, Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Alistair.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on that report? In which case, we're asked to note, to note the recommendations or approve the recommendations in paragraphs 3 through 7, as proposed by Peter. Would somebody like to second that, please? Peter Gabbert, thank you, Peter. Everybody in favour, please show. That's everybody. Thank you for that. Item 7 is the performance monitoring report for Q4. Again, that's Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. The report outlines the performance for Q4. You can see that 84% of projects rated as green, 8% not started, 8% rated as amber. The amber project being the renovation works at Astley Hall. Feel like I sort of almost live at Astley Hall these days. A number of times I've been recently, but I was there today again. The work is coming on. It is looking outstanding in terms of the improvements to the hall, particularly on the exterior. Obviously, we were delayed with COVID, but that is being picked back up. The idea of getting the exterior finished, around the time of the flower show is still the aim. As it says in the report, though, that obviously we've got to make sure that we complete the whole project. And again, I expect that to be sort of brought back pretty much on track. So that should be an exciting new development for the town and for the borough when the hall is completed. Other than that, all the main projects are on track, Chair. Just in terms of some of the delivery measures and targets, there we can see that the number of long-term empty properties is slightly off target. As it says in the report, though, there is one building with 17 apartments in it. When that is brought back into use, of course, that would immediately take us below target. So you can see that the figures there are slightly skewed given the nature of the property that we're dealing with. But again, that's slightly off. The number of affordable homes delivered. We just had a previous report, Chair, that you introduced about the preferred provider framework, and that will assist us in bringing forward those affordable homes, as will the opening of Tatton when that work is complete as well. So again, we expect to be able to get back to where we need to be in terms of delivery on the affordables. The other measures, Chair, that again are slightly off target, I would all regard, perhaps with the exception of the bins, the missed bin collections, which is improving significantly. But all the others are very much COVID related to sort of the average employment rates and average earnings, etc. I think when you look at it in the northwest, I think we're pretty you know, in the middle there in terms of average, and obviously off what our targets were. And again, there are measures there about how we improve that and how we address those.
Okay, thank you. I think it's fair to note that it's very hard to take initiatives when you're in the middle of a pandemic to start to improve some of these things, because you don't know whether they are the temporary blips or quite what levers you can utilise to bring change about. But obviously we will look to see, as we do hopefully move out of the lockdown and out of the COVID situation, what of those indicators don't move. And I think on the missed bin collections, Councillor Law, correct me if I'm wrong, there is some analysis that has been done for members to help explain where missed collections has been done. I don't know if that's been circulated more widely, but I've certainly seen that myself. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair. In terms of, I know a number of members have actually had a detailed analysis. I'm quite happy to share that to all councillors and some of the reasons that make up the missed bin collections figures. But obviously it's worth pointing out, as an authority, we have actually changed the emphasis from this performance indicator to a better performance indicator of the rates of recycling, which I think is more up to date.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments on that report? Councillor Morwood.
Just regarding the bins, I did see some of the data that we requested the other week and found it very interesting. And particularly that the number of bins that are sort of missed, as it were, that virtually a third of them can be attributed to the actual householder not doing the right thing, either putting out the wrong bin or making them too heavy. So on the face of it, you see all these very large figures, but it's just a reminder to our constituents out there to read their calendar and make sure they get it right. Thank you.
Is that a personal dig, Councillor Morwood? Because I always get it wrong. But I don't then ring it as a missed bin collection. Okay. No, all right, I won't take it personally. Thank you. Okay, noted. Okay, any other questions or comments on that report? I can't see any hands up. No, in that case, we're asked to note the recommendations in paragraph 2 that the report be noted. I'll take it from that the report is noted. Okay. Carry on, Peter. Item 8, HR and Payroll System.
Thank you, Chair. So the item in front of members is the payroll, as members will no doubt be well aware. We do have current existing arrangements with Blackpool Council for HR and payroll. I think that's been in place now for the last 15 years. And the report here says that we basically carry on with that service for the forthcoming 10 years. Other options of finding other providers were considered, but they were ruled out basically on the fact that there are a very limited number of providers and there was absolutely no evidence that would get a significantly or even remotely better deal going elsewhere. And of course, you'd have all the whole setup costs if you did go through a process of selecting a new provider, and then obviously their setup costs. So the proposal is that we continue with Blackpool Council for HR and payroll, Chair. If there are any technical questions, I'm sure Gary or one of the officers may be able to answer, but I think the principle is pretty straightforward.
Okay, thank you for that. So the recommendations in paragraphs 2 and 3. Any questions or comments on that report? No, that's proposed by Peter in paragraphs 2 and 3, seconded by Councillor Murray. All those in favour, please show. That's accepted, and we move on to item 8A, which is insurance portfolio procurement proposals. It's very difficult to say. Too many P's.
They get more exciting, Chair.
Councillor Wilson.
The only thing dynamic in this is the YPO Insurance Placement Dynamic Purchasing System 978. But it is obviously a very important...
the exemplar system.
Exactly. It is a very important, obviously, that we are insured. I think that's, again, a statement of the obvious. But this is to, again, agree the procurement being collaborative with South Ribble. And again, I won't read out the whole thing again, but again, in terms of the system that we use, and that's the evaluation criteria, which if you just turn to page 113, at the bottom there in paragraph 26 is the criteria and the weightings that have been considered. as I say, it's something we have to do. It's not something we have a choice to do. And obviously, by doing it with South Ribble, we again hope that we'll get greater efficiencies in the process.
Okay. Any questions on the IPPP, as I like to call it now? Can't see anybody. Proposals then are we accept the recommendations in paragraph 2 and 4 as proposed by Councillor Wilson. Anyone second those? Councillor Law, thank you. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Excellent. We've done neighbourhood working, we've done holiday activity and food. We now come on to item 11, which is Councillor Gabbett, housing enforcement policy. Councillor Gabbett.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendation is to approve the proposed housing enforcement policy. The purpose of the policy is to set out the Council's compliance and enforcement approach to housing standards, in particular to outline where exceptions and discretionary decisions can be made in order to support owner-occupiers in exceptional circumstances to improve living conditions. The policy is in addition to the existing private sector housing assistance policy, which aims to provide information, advice and enable activities relating to adaptations and supported improvements. And the policy sets out general principles the Council will follow in relation to regulation and more particularly how we can support homeowners to improve the standards of their homes. And the principal aims are to protect public health and safety from housing related standards and to ensure a consistent, more balanced approach when the Council's making enforcement decisions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gabbett. Any questions or comments on that report, please? No? Okay, so it's requested that we, accept the proposal in paragraph 2 to approve the proposed policy as proposed by Councillor Gabbett. Can somebody second that, please? Councillor Morwood. All those in favour, please show. That's fully accepted. Excellent. I think I'm keeping up with the agenda. We're going through these very quickly, so apologies. With lots of paper shuffling and people changing reports. So it's a large agenda, but we're getting through it. Item 12 is the exclusion of the public and the press. So given that we're moving into part 2, I propose that we exclude the public and press so we can deal with confidential matters. I don't need to propose that in this meeting, do I? Yeah, I'll propose that. Who's seconding that? Seconded. Have an election, I forget everything I've been doing previously. Everybody in favour of that, please show. That's accepted. So